Well, I gotta give Stephen King props. He actually managed to make a field of grass unnerving. In the Tall Grass is the newest Netflix adaptation of a Stephen King story directed by Vincenzo Natali. It stars Leicia de Oliveira, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Avery Whitted, and Patrick Wilson. And it tells the story of a brother and sister who venture into a field after hearing a young boy calling for help, only to discover that there's no way out. Like I said, this is the newest Netflix adaptation of a Stephen King novella, and much like 1922, I knew nothing about the story going into it. But the concept really intrigued me, and I love Patrick Wilson, so I decided it was worth checking out. And having seen it now, my feelings on it are pretty similar to my feelings on 1922. Flawed, but worth a watch, even though it's far from my favorite King adaptation. For those of you who don't know my feelings on Stephen King's writing, they're as follows. I think he's got some brilliant books, Misery, Carrie, Dead Zone, and past that, I think his concepts are brilliant, but his execution is usually lacking. And that kind of summarizes my feelings on this movie, in my opinion. Conceptually speaking, I absolutely love it. I think it's a fantastic cosmic horror piece, complete with a lot of mind-bending, existentially terrifying scenarios that lend to a lot of really creepy visuals. But in terms of its deeper elements, its narrative, its characters, its themes, if there even are any, it's kind of missing something. I will start with the good, though. This movie is very well shot, despite being a Netflix film. It makes superb use of its setting by framing all of the grass shots in a really claustrophobic, tense manner. And you really feel the increasing dread and paranoia as the characters get more and more lost in this field where everything just looks the same. And Natali doubles down on that by using these really wide overhead shots that slowly zoom out, and you can see that this field just goes on and on for miles with no signs of stopping as the camera ascends higher and higher, until all you're seeing is just this endless grass ocean with no view of the characters at all, and those are some of my favorite shots in the film. In addition to that, I love the way this film handles certain details and moments, and my like of this film really stems from a strong attachment to its horrific visuals and more intense moments than it does to the deeper elements of the film overall. For instance, the initial scene of them realizing the grass is moving them around is expertly handled. From the way their vocal distances keep shifting to the panic in the actors' eyes, to the moment when they initially jump up and see the grass has moved them to different locations between jumps. It's an amazing introduction to the horror. All of the scenes with The Rock are moody and atmospheric and horrifying. The scene of Becky telling Travis that she wanted to give up the baby is one of the few scenes that actually made me feel something in this movie. A certain death scene involving a lot of mind-bending time loop logic really creeped me out and gave me vibes from The Endless, even though it was also incredibly satisfying to watch. And the scene of the weird grass head people carrying Becky is probably my favorite visual moment in the film by far. Basically, the entire back half of this film is far superior to the first half when it goes full eldritch horror. There's some genuinely haunting imagery in the back half of this film, and those moments are the moments that really stuck with me and made this movie memorable. All the hands reaching up from the sinkhole, the weird grass head people, the rock. It's really effective, and those are by far the most unsettling moments in the film. On top of that, you get Patrick Wilson going absolutely batshit crazy, and I love when he plays the villain, and he delivers a great performance here. It's so over the top and so insane, and it's wonderful to watch. Where this movie really suffers is in its deeper elements. The movie works best when it's going full cosmic horror and not trying to be a character piece, because all of these characters are kind of awful. Granted, we do get that excellent Patrick Wilson performance, which is probably one of the high points of the movie for me. But it's hard to get invested when all of these characters are either overtly despicable or have some sort of shady past that makes them wildly unlikable, and with the exception of Travis's redemption at the end, I really didn't care about any of them. Narratively speaking, it's kind of like Season 3 of The Flash, where it gets way too wrapped up in its own time loop logic, and trying to make sense of it in any way will just make you go crazy, because if you think about it too hard, it doesn't make sense. But as a dread-fueled, claustrophobic cosmic horror piece, it works pretty well. Issues aside, this is a really good cosmic horror story conceptually, and there are some fantastic sequences throughout it. Had the core of the story and the characters been more resonant, and the thematic center been more prevalent throughout, I would have said this movie was solid, but as it stands, I'm gonna rate this the same as I rated 1922 and say that In the Tall Grass is good for fans of Stephen King adaptations. It's far from the best King movie of the last few years, but it still provides enough crazy eldritch horror and memorable visuals and a wonderful Patrick Wilson over-the-top performance to make it worth a watch. It's streaming right now on Netflix, and if you want to check it out, if anything I've said here interests you, give it a watch. I do think it's worth at least one viewing. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this channel and you want to see more, click down there, like, comment, subscribe. You could be like any of these cool people right here and donate to my Patreon. The link is in the description. I would really appreciate it. You get some cool rewards. I just added a new reward tier. If you want to poke around and see if there's anything that interests you, even $1 would help. Again, it would mean a lot to me, but even if you don't, thank you so much for watching anyway, and I'll see you all very soon.
It's just grass.